I told my husband, Tim, I had to come out and speak today, and he said, try not to be too witty, charming, or intellectual. He said, just be yourself. So you'll have me in all that glory. So it's great to be here to tell a little bit about how I got started. Just to give you a little background, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, served a mission in Australia. When I got home, ended up going to BYU, moved out here in 2004. But back in 1997, I was a junior in high school, and I started my first business with streetlooks.com. And I always say entrepreneurs are always solving problems. And the problem I had was I had this beautiful Chevy Cavalier that I wanted to trick out, but I couldn't afford any parts or accessories. But I started finding ways I could buy stuff at a local shop at a discount and then resell it online. So I was able to go from that to that fancy little blue light car. I had a neighbor that was developing websites at the time, and this is back when AOL discs would come in the mail. You remember you get free minutes for like 30 minutes and you would take every disc you could. So I learned how to code from my neighbor and launched streetlooks.com. And this was the very first iteration of the website, and started selling car parts and accessories all over the country. And within a year, we were selling worldwide out of the basement of our house. My brother was my first employee. My mom was my second. My dad was always upset because I took all the food storage space in the basement, which we never had food storage, but we had inventory storage, which I think was just as good. So this is a picture of some of the storage. This was my room. It was constantly a mess because that was the shipping facility. But these were some of my favorite memories growing up because this was my first taste in entrepreneurship. And I think one of the things I'm most grateful for is I had parents that never told me that's ridiculous, that can't be done. They always supported whatever dream or idea I had. And it was sort of that blind ignorance that why not? You know, and I tell people this story and they say, you did that in high school. And I said, well, I never knew any different. I didn't know you couldn't do a business. And so I think that a lot of times as entrepreneurs too, there's a refusal to accept whatever you're presented. You're unhappy or unsatisfied with the way things are. You want to change something. You got to scratch that itch. And so entrepreneurs are really good at scratching our own itch. We're solving a problem that's usually for ourselves first and then for our customers. And so I ended up running this during college through my dorm. And then in 2004, ended up selling the company. And that's when I partnered up with my brother and my dad to start Prestman Auto. And so we started in a warehouse on 3rd West in Salt Lake City, right next to the strip club. If anyone knows, not Southern Exposure, but it's the other one. American Bush, that's right. That's where we were. It was just 4 employees, me, my dad, my brother, and a mechanic. We had a little warehouse. We had about 20 cars, 30 cars. We were selling 15 to 25 cars a month. And over the next several years, up to today, we now have 250 cars in inventory with 52 employees, and we do about $70 million a year in revenue. That's been also a really amazing experience learning how to grow and scale a company. We also made a ton of mistakes. We opened up a second location and that failed. You know, I think as entrepreneurs, not everything you do works, but what people see is what does work. And I think that's the other thing I think that keeps people nervous about starting a business is they think that everyone just strikes gold day one. And I think the difference is entrepreneurs are just so stubborn and refuse to give up, they'll keep trying and trying until they get it right. They're not afraid to fail, and failure is an opportunity to learn. It tells you something that didn't work. Now you know what doesn't work. Now you can figure out what does. The process to success is never a straight linear line getting to that point. It's a series of mistakes and failures over and over. So 2010 hits. The recession, as you guys remember, the Great Recession was awful, especially if you're selling cars. We almost went bankrupt. I remember we tried to sell the property we were in, no one would buy it. We tried to sell off cars, no one were buying cars. We were running out of cash. And in middle of 2009, I had a good friend who was a hairstylist who had just moved into a salon suite. It was one actually right down the street in a little warehouse. She was so excited. She said, you got to come down. I opened my own salon, but it's a little different. And it's just me. And I'm thinking, where's everybody else at? And so I go to visit her, and it's in a little warehouse with 18 rooms, and they're all individual salons. And the minute I walked through that door, I knew what a great idea. But I also thought, this is the beauty industry. Why does it not look like a space for creatives? Why is it not inspiring when you walk in? Why is there no business support for these new entrepreneurs? And so I approached my brother and I said, I have an idea. This is how we can get out of cars.
Pulse out real quick.
Yeah. We need to get into something more stable because I was tired of the up and down cycle of cars. The economy, you're at the mercy of whatever is going well and whatever is not. You just have to weather that storm. And so we had been thinking of ideas for a long time. And I ended up hearing about this famous guy in Salt Lake, Matthew Landis, who's actually here with us today. And I had several people say, you need to talk to Matthew. And I said, I know, do you think he would meet with me? And a friend of mine put us together. We went to lunch at Takashi, and I just told him, I said, I have this idea. I heard you're the best. I said, I just want to know if this is a bad idea. And so I explained the whole concept. It was this co-working space for beauty professionals with business support, training, branding services, everything to help them launch their business, like a beauty incubator. And at the end of that, Matthew paused and he said, well, I think you'd be stupid. And that's all I heard. And then he said, if you don't do this. And then I stepped back, I said, oh, so that's a good idea? And he goes, you have to do this. This is much needed. And it was using that validation to get me motivated to take that risk and start Image Studios. And so as you can see, this is what our spaces look like. Again, it's a lot like WeWork or Regis or Office Evolution, but for hairstylists, beauty professionals, nail techs, estheticians, anyone that does anything related to beauty is welcome to come open a business. And so what a great space for people who are very entrepreneurial. Most people get into beauty with one motive in mind, which is one day they want to own their own salon or spa. They go to beauty school, which is it's teaching skills. It's not teaching a lot of business, and so there's not a lot of aligned support in the industry to help people get to where they want to go. The career path is tough because of the lack of support that is usually provided. So we took that was the problem. The solution was, how do we facilitate a platform to help people open their own business? And I tell you, there's nothing more rewarding than working with a bunch of entrepreneurs because it's contagious. It's motivating to be around other people who are taking a risk, who have put all the chips on the table and said, I don't care, I'm going to do it. And I know I'm gonna do it. That's not to say they're not terrified. I'll say the bipolar emotions of an entrepreneur are all over the place. For those of you that are entrepreneurs, which I assume most people here are or work with one, it's a scary job because there is no real playbook for your business that you're creating. You have to create it as you go. And so, but to be alongside our customers who were also entrepreneurs going through the same thing was so motivating because their success helped fuel ours. And it helped encourage us to continue to think bigger, to keep growing. And so we started in 2010 here in Draper. Our first store is actually right off this exit on the west side of the freeway in that shopping center. We ended up opening 5 stores in 5 years here in Salt Lake. We ended up then looking at how do we expand further, and franchising became the most likely way that we could continue to grow this brand. One of the goals I've had was to always create a brand that would become a national brand. And so we really started to figure out how do we franchise this. Made a ton of mistakes in the beginning years. And we'll obviously continue to make mistakes as we grow and reach new levels that we're not accustomed to, but really started to figure out how do we perfect our systems and our process and protect the brand. Because when people buy a franchise, they're buying your mistakes, they're buying your knowledge and experience, and they're buying a license to use your brand and your operating system. And so what they want to do is avoid the long runway to success and avoid the costly mistakes and have a reduction of risk by being able to buy something that's been proven, which is why franchising is such a great opportunity for a lot of entrepreneurs in this country, well, all over the world. But franchising is especially big in America, where it's a very entrepreneurial country. Our ancestors, our descendants, or great grandparents. A lot of them migrated from overseas. That was a nasty journey back in the day. Our roots are entrepreneurial as Americans. We are built on immigration and risk takers. And so the entrepreneurial spirit in this country, I think, is greater than anywhere else in the world. And so franchising's been a lot of fun because there's a lot of new challenges that we continue to grow and scale. We are now, as of today, at 131 locations under development in 14 states. Our goal by the end of 2023 is 300 locations in the US. And then as we continue to grow, long-term, our 10-year goal is to have 1,000 locations worldwide. So right now we're speaking with individuals in Australia and Canada to start international expansion at some point. And so now the goal is, how do we make a worldwide brand, which I think has been really exciting. And again, figuring out how do you align with the right business partners to do that every step of the way. So to think in 10 years, we're here where we're at. We started actually 11 years ago, and where we'll be in another 10 years is so exciting. I won't lie, I am up late at night worrying about a lot of stuff, as most entrepreneurs are, because there's always things you don't know. And I would say one thing I've learned, you're compensated as an entrepreneur or even as an employee, you are compensated to the level of problems that you solve. And I always tell people, when they get problems pushed their way and they get overwhelmed and they get stressed, I remind them, especially people on our team as we're growing and scaling, the stress you feel when you're dealing with something uncomfortable is because this is something you don't know. And the older we get, the more difficult it is to learn new things, as we all know. But when you're uncomfortable, stressed, frustrated in business, that's because you're being pushed into something you're not familiar with. You should embrace that. That's the opportunity, is how do I figure this out? Not how do I avoid that situation and stay put and keep that stasis going so I could just be comfortable. Comfort's nice, but it's not pushing you. And so I always tell people too, when you're starting a business, running a business, growing a business, when you feel like you want to just scream, that's because you're in a position you're not very comfortable. And you got to figure out what it is that's making you squirm and learn how to accomplish that or gain that skill or hire someone who can, so you can get to that next level. So, and I liken it too, for those of you that are running a business, who are working for an entrepreneur or thinking about starting a business. One of the key things though is it's the easy part is creating the business plan, the idea, creating the structure, thinking about how it's going to work, the vision of the whole process. The harder part is then hiring humans to come and work for you who all have different backgrounds, experiences, personalities, and emotions. Business is easy. It's the emotional component that's difficult, because you've got to get people to work together, follow a vision, align with the vision, and continue to grow with you. And so one of the things that's been key in our growth was assembling the right team, which took many years and tons of mistakes and wrong people. Just because what I've always done is I hire people that I like who remind me of me. Then those aren't great people, because I'm just hiring more of me. I need to hire for my weaknesses. I need to be honest with myself about what my weaknesses are. And I need to be aware of that and say, I need to hire for that. I need to fill in the gaps. And so I realized about 3 years ago, I had a team of people that all were very much like I was, and that was not a great team. There was a lot of problems, a lot of things not getting done, and started to reapproach this differently, and have now hired a stellar team who Matthew is now part of it. And it's just been really great, because I liken entrepreneurship to driving a race car. The CEO or the entrepreneur, whoever's running that company, is driving that race car. And you're in a race with other people racing to win the race. When you pull over at the pit stop, the team runs up, they service, change the tires, fuel it up, and let you get back in the race. But if you have to get out of the car and change your own tires because of a team problem, You're not going to win that race. I promise you that. And you've got to remember too, the other challenge I've had and learned through a lot of mistakes has been, as an entrepreneur, we have so much passion for our idea, but we often don't get out of our own way because we're too worried that everyone else is going to screw it up. The problem is then you just stay small and you'll never grow because you will be the bottleneck of your own success if you don't get out of your own way. And it's a really difficult time in business when you reach that point where you realize that if I don't let go and let people make some mistakes to learn on their own, I will never grow this business beyond what it is today. And as you hire and scale, there will be lots of mistakes people will make. But you also have to then determine what is a non-negotiable and what can you live with. And just like in many analogies, the way people get to a destination is different for every person. But if they are capable of getting to the destination, let them take their own way. They may want to take 7th East instead of Highland or I-15. They may want to ride a bike. As long as they can meet the deadline and get there, let them do it the way that they're doing it if the results are there. Because your way is one way, but you also miss the opportunity for great ideas from other people who see your blind spots. Because the more committed you are to your idea, the less you're going to see the other opportunities around it because you become so committed to making this happen that you'll miss some of the most important parts of evolution as you continue to grow your business and scale it up. So I think that's been some of the biggest learning experiences in franchising. And I think really for anyone out there and franchising is likened to just scaling any business. We're scaling our business through one method, but people scale their business through a variety of methods, whether it's licensing or scaling their own corporate locations, expanding their own footprint, diversifying their product line or their offering. And so I think with scaling though, you've got to figure out how do you define the vision, the values, the mission. What is it that's a foundational piece of the company that makes it great? And shockingly enough, as a lot of you probably have learned just like I have through experience, we're obsessed about all the details because the details matter, but you'll also realize as you continue to scale, there's a lot of room for some of those details to maybe get figured out later on. The core product, the core mission, is that being protected? The details you iron out as you continue to grow. But I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs too that obsess over so many details and they're not thinking about the mission or the core product. And so what they're doing is they're spending all this time outside of the race doing the job for all the people that should be supporting them because they're micromanaging. And again, we're protecting our baby. But there's that pivotal point, and it usually happens for me, at least in my experience, and I've seen this happen with a lot of people, but it usually happens right as you really hit burnout, crash and burn, and then reach this point of despair where you're just thinking, you start to resent the business. You start to resent doing it because you're now at a point you're probably making less money because you've scaled than you did 2 years ago. But now you're in this weird predicament where you've got a lot of things going on, but now you're making less, cash flow's tighter. And that's usually the point where people either figure that part out or they withdraw and they go back to a smaller size. And I'll tell you, scale is not always the solution for every business. Not every business has to scale. But for those that want to scale, that is a pitfall. I would say be very careful about observing, because when you start to feel that burnout happen, it's really difficult. For any of you who've been through a true burnout, it's tough. It's hitting rock bottom. And so you've really got to pay attention is how do you plan for growth, not react to it. That was a lesson we learned in scaling Prestman Auto. We reacted to growth. We always hired new positions when we absolutely needed it because we were trying to save money. And that's not the time to hire. When you need someone today, you should have hired them 3 months ago at minimum. Because you need, as you know, new hires are tough to vet. You don't know if they're gonna be great, and you need to train them. And by the time they go live, you wanna make sure that they're the right person, because you probably absolutely need them in place. But hiring when you need them, you've got another 3 months, and then you may have a 50-50 chance it works, and then you've got to go back and start again. So, yeah.
So, to your point of scaling and growing, especially now with this economy that unemployment is so low, Utah has the second lowest unemployment in the nation. So, for a small business that is trying to grow, and like you said, the fear of delegate, responsibilities to a stranger, and like you said, take care of your baby, and allowing them to make mistakes, because mistakes will happen, but it will be, one of your employees that you're mentoring, to help your business grow. What be your advice for small businesses to attract and retain, talent in an economy that, it's so difficult to find that? In our industry as an insurance, health insurance, part of Intermont and Select Health, we talk to employers that, offering benefits is one of the ways you retain top talent, because you offer healthcare, dental, vision, that type of thing. But on top of that, what be your advice for small businesses to say, you need 1 or 2 new people to grow your business? How do you capture that type of talent, being so difficult to find?
Yeah, and it's tough right now, obviously, with how low unemployment is. The first thing I would say is I'd love to take a look at the job ads, see how the position is being sold. I see most job ads horribly written, they're not exciting, and they're not translating the culture. The intangible parts of employment are different than the financial parts. Benefits, wages, that's important, but that's not everything everyone's looking for. And we've hired many people over the years who have taken pay cuts because they want to be a part of the company because of the culture. So I would encourage you to think about, how are you selling the job? Does that ad, or however you're looking at recruiting, does it convey the mission and the vision and the intangible part about why this brand, why do you want to work for me? Let me tell you. You have to sell that idea, you have to sell that vision as if you're selling your biggest customer on a new contract or whatever it is, making sure that's good. And in a really tight scenario like we are here, it's really tough to do the typical recruiting. You then look at also identifying, is the job description clear? Do you know what that person looks like on paper? Do you have a very clear picture? Now, how do you just go find them somewhere else and entice them to come over to you? I hate to say the word poach, but that's what you have to do in tight markets, is find that person. When you're out somewhere and you see someone and they seem like a great fit, get to know them and encourage them. Hey, it's very flattering if someone not offers you a job, but says, hey, I want you to work for me. That's flattering. People will listen if you say that. They'll at least give you 5 minutes. But I can guarantee you, when you're having trouble on Indeed, start networking and start thinking everywhere you go, who is that person I need for marketing or for accounting? And see if maybe you never know who's looking to make a shift. So just since I'm coming up on time, I just want to mention, I had someone ask me recently what was my biggest regret if I could think back in business. And honestly, it was to think bigger and to not be afraid to fail. And I know I've taken lots of risks, I've made some failures, I've had a lot of success. But if I could go back 10 years, I would tell myself to stop worrying so much, take more risk. It's going to be okay. Failure is all right. Again, it's a constant learning process. But I even take, it's constantly, I always think when we strategize and set goals in our business, I always challenge the team and then ask them to challenge me. Are we thinking big enough? Truly, are we thinking big? Because why not? If you want to scale, have some ridiculous goals. That 300 locations by the end of 2023 was set when we had 14 locations a year and a half ago. And I kept looking on the paper, on my notes, trying to think how the hell can we get there? And I just thought it would take a damn miracle to do that. But because we set the target so high and we worked backwards, we had our milestones every quarter, every year, and we're gonna hit that. We might even exceed it. And so that's where put the target on paper as ridiculous as it is, and go for that. Because if you put that target safe, you'll hit that target. If you put it big, you'll probably hit that too. You just have to, it's all about reference and frame points of where you're setting your sights. If you set them right in the middle, you will probably land right in the middle. And I think there's just so much stigma to failure. Failure is a degree. Every time you fail, I would say every time you lose money in business, you just earned a degree. What was the degree, and how are you not going to do it again? That's a learning experience that's worth that loss. If you don't make that loss now, or that mistake, you'll make it 5 years from now when it's about 10 times the cost. So I always tell people that the mistakes are good. They're feedback. Oh, that didn't work. We evolve, we do it differently. Instead, there is a lot of stigma about you fail, you're worthless, which is literally like we learn how to walk by falling. You have to think our evolution as human beings is based on failure. We thrive on that negative feedback to let us know that didn't work, try a different way, and you keep trying until you get to that point that it works, and then you keep replicating that over and over. So, but coming up on time, I better jump so I don't push everyone else, but thank you again. It's great to be here and spend some time with you guys.